Remember that gold bars off the Titanic clip?
Now it's just how to get the money out as fast as possible before they come in and like fuck up. It truly feels like we're on the Titanic and we're throwing like gold bars off the hatch.
Who are the gold bars going to?
Nonprofits, states, tribes. We gave them the money because it was harder. If it was a government-run program, they could take the money away. If Trump won, and because it was a external policy against Trump winning. Until the Trump people come in and tell us we can no longer give out money.
That wasn't just conservative media hype. That was the honest truth out of the mouth of babes. And you know something might be wrong when even the children President Biden installed all over the EPA know something is deeply amiss about what they're doing. Well, it turns out the new sheriff at the EPA agrees. But in his efforts to undo it, he is facing sabotage and booby traps left by his predecessors. Now the FBI itself is investigating some of the shady billions taken from you, the taxpayer, and given to former Obama officials, and old Stacey Abrams, a friend of that show, and the crazy person and wicked, evil election denier. But before we get to that, I want to talk about Greenpeace, one of the largest and most disruptive anti-human groups on the planet, and a group I'm sure is well known to you. On Wednesday, they suffered what could be a mortal blow. It looks like their lies might finally be catching up with them. Now try to remember further back through all the smoke and the chaos of the last few years, and you might remember the protests at Standing Rock. Those are the very ones that supposedly inspired Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez to run for office. Well, of course, they weren't very peaceful, and they weren't even very truthful.
Oh boy. What a great shot there.
Joining me now is Daniel Turner, the Executive Director of Power of the Future, a friend of the show, and one of the smartest people I know on energy, on where it comes from, and who's working to try and stop it. Daniel, thanks for joining us.
Great to be with you, Chris. Thank you.
So Power of the Future was in some ways inspired by Standing Rock protests. Tell me what happened at Standing Rock. Remind us. Time flies so quickly that it's easy to forget the chaos that inspired our very own AOC.
Yeah, it really wasn't that many years ago, but every time there's an energy infrastructure project, a new well, a pipeline, there's always some leftist pushback, and I get it. That's just the nature of our country, and the left loves to protest at any opportunity. But Standing Rock was different in the size of the protests and how well orchestrated it was, and then the actual lies around the protest. And I was starting Power the Future because I saw the damage done by the radical green movement, especially to coal miners in rural America. And I was watching this protest grow in strength and in numbers, and realized the whole thing was completely orchestrated. You look at their campground. They had tents and a grid with bathrooms and laundry facilities and food stations. And I always wondered, where's the food coming from, right? I mean, a pallet shows up with hundreds of pounds of rice and bottles of water. Who paid for it? Leftists are the cheapest people on earth. They're not going out of pocket. So where's this money coming from? I saw some of their activists and their spokespeople. One was indicted and had several arrest records for sexual assault, and he was one of their spokesperson. I remember this young woman, a blonde with a Jersey accent, talking about our people, and I thought, you don't have people. You're from Jersey. Who are these people?
Those are our people.
Exactly. The whole thing was fake and it was lies. And I gotta hand it to Kelsey Warren, the owner of and president of Energy Transfer, the company that pushed back and said, I'm not just going to stand here and let you villainize me and make up lies about me and my company because you're a bunch of crazy environmentalists. And it was years in the coming, but God bless him, and God bless him fighting for truth and standing up to these absolute communist liars. It's a great day for America.
So what he turned around and did is he sued Greenpeace, which it looks like, according to this first ruling, was the group that was behind it. And he took hundreds of millions of dollars, it looks like, out of Greenpeace's budget. So how did he win? On what grounds did he win? And where would a case like this go from here? And what impact, were Greenpeace not to win on appeals, what sort of impact would that have on their ability to continue functioning and doing what they've been doing for these decades?
Yeah, he won on a number of grounds: obstructing the law, fraud, violence, damage done to him, his company, material damage, machine damage. Violence against some of his workers, etc. Of course, we respect the First Amendment, and that's what Greenpeace is hiding behind, right? You have the right to protest, but do you have the right to throw Campbell's soup on artwork? Do you have the right to glue your hands to the ground and prevent people from getting to Reagan Airport for their morning commute, right? How far is your First Amendment allowed to go? And how far can you hide behind it? And that's what Greenpeace did, right? When you are bringing in out-of-state activists and paying them and organizing a deliberate protest, it's no longer First Amendment, right? Now you're engaged in a level of racketeering that we used to go after the mafia on, right? And that's what the point that they were making in this lawsuit, right? This is not free expression of a differing point of view. This is actual orchestrated violence, and as well as lies, just flat out lies about the company, lies about the environmental damage, lies about the damage to native communities.
Genocide, I was told. It was a genocide.
Genocide, exactly, right? And that's the great thing about the left is they're never moderate in their language, and especially when it comes to the climate issue. You never see a leftist, from Bernie Sanders and AOC to Greenpeace. They never say, hey, look, I don't think we should drill here. I don't think it's a good idea. They always say, if we drill here, it will be the end of society. It will be the end of civilization. It's so extreme. And, you know, we've been doing this extreme climate crap for 40 years. The American people are tired of it.
But how was usually these green groups, which are them and the animal rights groups, are low-key some of the most violent terrorists that you have to deal with in the United States. Whether it's they've murdered fast food employees in the past. They used to do the log splitting, where they would put spikes into trees, and if somebody tried to cut that down because it's a crop that will regrow and is part of the American economy, it would come out and potentially kill the actual people, the workers on site. But usually they're also really careful. Back in my days at the Daily Caller, we went down and investigated some of these groups in the bayou. We found printed materials, but it was difficult to actually truly tie these people back to something like Greenpeace. Was Greenpeace just getting kind of lazy and comfortable in their ability to more openly organize? Or was Kelsey's case something that just fought back in a way that Americans hadn't fought back before?
I'm sure in discovery, a lot of this came out. And normally groups don't even want to get to that point. They don't want to file a lawsuit because it exposes them to negative press. It exposes them to threats against their company. It's also part of the reason why I started Part of the Future as a 501c4. You can't cancel me, right? You can't boycott my product. You can't break down the doors of my company, but you can do that sometimes to the private sector, and that's why people are reluctant to push back, right? They don't need Greta Thunberg in their lobby. They don't need the negative press because they have shareholders, right? They have employees they have to pay. But Kelsey Warren was brave, and he was not going to let this go. And I'm sure in the very first, when they got this filing and the judge said, yeah, we'll go to trial, discovery opens up a lot of this. And I am sure these green groups are sloppy. I'm sure they're sloppy in their emails. I'm sure they're sloppy in their receipts. Again, someone was buying the pallets of food. Someone's buying porta potties. Someone's orchestrating all of this. There's credit card receipts. And, one of the reasons why I started this organization is I knew we, the good guys, needed someone to fight on their behalf. And if they're not willing to do it, Power of the Future is. And I applaud Kelsey for being the first person to push back at this level. And I think it will give others courage. I think it will give other people who are besmirched by the radical left the backbone to say, no, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not going to jeopardize my company, my economy, world peace, national security, because you don't want a pipeline built because you're a radical environmental leftist, probably funded by Russia and China, or competing companies. No, we're gonna put an end to this, and it's a great step.
So what's it mean for Greenpeace? Will they survive this if they're not able to appeal it? Is this an existential threat to a group that's entered American lore.
Yeah, probably. If the damages stay, I don't know what their assets are. All of these groups have beautiful office space. If you ever get a chance to poke around, they all are located in either Manhattan or San Francisco. You know the ones that are in Washington, D.C. Huge, full blocks, right? 14-story buildings for the environment. So I'm sure a lot of their assets will have to get liquidated. I'm sure whatever reserves they have. But yeah, if they're put out of business, that's great. It's a good day for America. But there are hundreds more and way bigger than Greenpeace and way more powerful that have more lawyers and more attorneys. This is just the beginning. But reverse that. How many groups did they put out of business, right? How many oil and gas companies? How many coal companies? How many bankruptcies and divorces and suicides did they cause? How many loggers did Greenpeace kill back in the day where you've got a widow and a bunch of kids because dad was chopping down a tree and was killed? And there was never any justice for those people. So this is not about, this is about justice and setting right the evil they have inflicted on this country for years, hiding behind the earth, hiding behind climate change. And my loathing of these green groups cannot possibly any more. I think it's great. I think it's just the tip of the iceberg. More has to be done.
So more is being done. The EPA and DOJ right now are seemingly going after some of these groups that, like you said, have popped up. Just in the last year of American existence, with billions of dollars in taxpayer monies propping them up. What are these groups? One is run by a former Obama staffer, $1 billion or $2 billion to her. Another one's run by Stacey Abrams. I've seen her children's books about her in the Old Town bookstore. Apparently she's a hero, but I'm not exactly sure what her expertise is in handling billions of dollars in taxpayer money to do environmental work. I mean, what are these groups? What do they do? Or have they done anything other than simply steal at this point from the American taxpayer?
That's all they have done, and my organization, will not rest. We've already filed a number of letters to the department, sent a number of letters to the Department of Justice. We will not rest until people are led away in handcuffs, because this is not about funding nonprofits and charities. This is about using the taxpayers, committing fraud to push radical Democrat policies, radical green policies, radical trans policies, a whole plethora of leftist agenda. Some of these groups were created literally at the end of 2024, and once the election was certified that it was Trump who had won, received billions of dollars in grants.
So that's the interesting thing. It was after the election.
Yeah.
And then they went back and changed. We're learning now that they've changed the contracts to make it even more difficult after the fact for the taxpayer to be able to get that money back.
And think about any group that ever received a grant or a contract. Think of the roofer you hire to do your house. These are groups that have no history, no record of success, no staff, no office, no website, and yet they received billions. We talk in DC numbers so comfortably in the billions and 450 billion and 1.9 trillion. We've lost the idea of what 2 billion. If you knew someone who had $2 billion, you'd be the happiest person in the world. Stacey Abrams got $2 billion. And she has no experience in the green movement whatsoever. All she has experience is running for office. So what was she going to do with the money? She was going to, of course, advance climate agenda, but she was probably going to advance climate agenda by John Ossoff, who's up for re-election in the Senate in Georgia, knocking on doors saying he cares deeply about climate change, and if you care about climate change, we want to remind you who the climate change candidate is. And she would justify it as saying, this is climate change related. And of course it's not. And this is what these groups do. And they do it with taxpayer money. And it is absolutely criminal what they have done. And it is not enough to say, wow, this is bad. This shouldn't have happened. People have to go to jail. And that little twink in that undercover video talking about, throwing gold bars off the Titanic, drinking a fruity cocktail in winter also. How embarrassing. Like, who drinks a fruity cocktail in winter? Like, that little kid should be brought up on charges because he's laughing about stealing money from the American people and giving it to liberal groups, all to get back at President Trump. That level of corruption is so deep in the deep state, in the bureaucracy. It's why they're responding to Elon Musk and Doge with complete violence and rage and burning things and anger, because their money is being stolen from them, and all they know is violence and anger. So we got a long ways to go, but we are uncovering a lot of the filth that is Washington, D.C.
See, this is why I need to have you back soon, because I could fill a whole show just talking to you about this. How much this is actually not even activist funded, how much of it's funded by you, the taxpayer, and how this whole lie that all this money is behind pushing back against these poor little hippie environmentalists, when in fact the complete reverse is true. But I've taken enough of your time. We have to move on. Daniel Turner with Power of the Future, thanks once again for joining us.
Always great, Chris. Thank you so much.